Welcome back. Segment 3. We have a terrific interview for you. We are with Peter Breen. He is on the line with us right now. Peter, I served with Peter in the Illinois State House. We were colleagues there together on the Republican side. He was our floor leader, which means that he led the debate for the Republicans. Why is that? Because Peter is a Notre Dame grad, a very good lawyer. He works with the Thomas More Society. He has been a chief lawyer in the David Daleiden cases that everybody around the nation is aware of. But lately, Thomas More Society has been inundated with cases concerning people who do not want this mandated vaccine, who want to stand up for their parental rights and not have their children masks, and a whole host of other issues. Peter, prior to us starting our recording, you were just telling us about your latest court case in Colorado that received national attention, I think, just yesterday. Why don't you give our audience a little sense of what's going on there?
Well, and so we have been getting thousands of requests from folks who want to, take a religious exemption to the vaccine. In most places, these mandates are everywhere now, and it's actually, the untold story is, for the most part, we've been able to successfully negotiate with employers, get folks their religious exemptions. But there have been a few really bad actors. So we sued the state of New York. The governor of New York actually said, that she was doing no religious exemptions. We got an injunction against that, temporary injunction against that. We're suing others on that basis. But the University of Colorado Medical School had an absolutely outrageous policy where they said, well, we'll give you a religious exemption, but only if you belong to a religion that teaches all vaccines are bad. So if your religious exemption is based on religious teachings about abortion or whatever else, we won't do that. And you're just sitting there going, it's unconstitutional six ways from Sunday. I mean, you're sitting there going, well, they violated the Establishment Clause, the Free Exercise Clause, all of this. So we just filed a suit there, and because they were going to fire, we have two clients right now, medical student who was forced to take a leave of absence, so forced to break their apartment lease, go home, sell all their belongings, local belongings there in Colorado, go back home. And then there was a doctor, a pediatric care doctor who has been on the front lines for the last 19 months of COVID, working hard, working at the Children's Hospital there, and mom herself, and she was going to be fired today. And so we filed the suit earlier this week. We sought a temporary restraining order. And fortunately for us, the university realized that they had a little bit of an issue on their hands, at least with the immediate firing of the doctor. So they agreed to keep her on, at least until we can get our preliminary injunction motion heard. But what I was telling you guys is we've had, at least 5 more people, almost identical circumstances, people that are, imagine a 4th-year student in a medical or dental program. You've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. You've studied your tail off. And in every other instance, prior to just right now, religious exemptions have been accepted, no questions asked, everything's fine, they work it out. And all of a sudden you're being told, oh yeah, you're in your 4th year? Nope, can't finish the program. You're going to be on an indefinite leave of absence until COVID clears, or until they decide to just terminate you from the school. Or a security guard who's sitting there going, he's mostly, outdoors. They're all masked anyway when they're indoors. And, you're fired because of your sincere religious beliefs about, the vaccine. And so that's, we're dealing with that everywhere. We're suing as much as we can, but I got to tell you, there are times and places, it breaks my heart. Yeah. The way employment law works, sometimes the person has to be fired and only has relief after the fact. And so we're helping people through that process. It's really, it breaks my heart. We're sitting there going, okay, go for unemployment benefits. Now we're going to file charges with the EEOC, fight through the employment law process. This is going to be a big, big deal for many years to come, just because of that, these firings too. But again, we're trying to stop as many of them as we can on the front end.
Well, Peter, the reason we even have you on our program right now is because we called you for assistance, since we're hearing in our own circle people are looking for a lawyer to defend them
A lot of
on all of
people
this.
are.
I mean, a ton of people. We have an entire group of mothers who want lawyers to help defend
them.
them.
Public school parents, private school parents, teachers. I mean, we talk to people on an almost daily basis that are like, but what can we file a lawsuit? Where can we talk to a lawyer?
Yeah, the latest outreach that I received was from an Illinois Department of Corrections officer who said, look, by mid-October, if you're at a major, lieutenant, captain, major, if you're a major level in IDOC, you have to get the vaccination by mid-November. It's going down to the lieutenant level. And, I'm 2.5 years from retirement. I don't want this vaccination. I've already had COVID, by the way. Everybody's dismissing natural immunity. And these people feel like they are just being jammed up and have this shoved down their throats when they don't want an experimental drug. It's still an experimental drug. It hasn't even been a year yet since they have been rolled out. And so, I mean, I feel so bad for these folks.
Yeah.
You guys must get thousands of these a day.
It has been horrible having to deal with this. I mean, we were able for a little while, just right at the beginning, to handle the workflow. But when a few hundred people come in a day, we just don't have the staff to deal with that.
Yeah.
Nobody would. And so we've set up a website on our site. So on our site, there's a page, on thomasmoresociety.org. If you go there, there is a specific vaccine mandate page. We have sample letters that folks can use with their employers or their educational institutions. To assert a religious exemption. Really, though, I will say this is the problem we've got.
Okay.
Our public health laws are strong. And that's because, we in our last 100, 150, 200 years, the entirety of human history, we've faced real, nasty stuff. Spanish flu, smallpox, diseases that would just, kill huge numbers of people, leave people permanently disfigured, what have you. And so the laws on this front are strong, and there's a reason they are. You
unless you're running across the southern border, but that's another issue.
That is actually an issue. Yeah.
The southern border is a whole other thing. But right now, what we advise folks, the main places, and really, your strongest defense, it's a religious defense or a medical defense. So if you want to be, if you need an exception or an exemption, that is what you've got to assert. And so for Catholics and Christians, while they may have other reasons that they object, in particular to the vaccine, if they have the objection based on the connection to abortion from the development of the currently available vaccines, that is a legitimate religious exemption basis. And so we've got sample letters for that. I would say, this is another thing that really annoyed me, is that there are, as we understand it, vaccines available in other parts of the world that have no connection to abortion and actually are not mRNA at all. They're the more traditional vaccine technology. And for whatever reason, they're not available here. And I've actually, just as myself, said, boy, if they had some of those other vaccines available here in the States, I would bet you, our folks would probably take those. Some of the others that are using more traditional vaccine technology, so that maybe something that you're more used to, and then those that are not involving abortion. But this is really the place where we are. And I'll tell you, we have tried to help as many people as we can. I have to say, though, remember, our public health laws are really strong because they're intended to fight smallpox.
On that note, Peter, I'm told that Illinois has one of the strongest rights of conscience acts when it comes to also not receiving health care that you don't agree with or you don't want. And so have you been able to do anything with that in the state of Illinois to protect people?
Well, and we do have that. That is a strong law, and it's an additional protection in Illinois. It provides treble damages when you win a case there. So, for instance, if you and that the protection, at least on its face, is strong. The problem is, in most of these circumstances, you're suing after the fact.
Okay.
And also, I've seen recently that apparently there's a move now. There are those in Springfield that want to repeal this law. Yeah, because they And there are folks that have wanted to repeal this law for a long time. In fact, major employers, major companies, because it hurts them.
The governor is actually demanding that they take a vote on the Health Care Right of Conscience Act. Chapin Rose was in Center Square talking about it yesterday, I think. But yeah, he wants a vote on it. So
right. He doesn't want to vote on the rest of his tyrannical policies, but he does want to vote on this one because he wants you to be able to have no recourse whatsoever against your employer when they want you to do something to your body that you don't want to have happen. I mean, this is the hypocrisy of the left on this issue is just unbelievable.
Well, I got to tell you, we who know Illinois politics and have been right in the mix. The group that is going to be there are going to be a number of groups that are in favor of the current act, and one of them is the trial lawyers, because
of course,
you're making your money off of plaintiff's trial bar. I mean, this is one of the places where the Republicans and the trial lawyers are very much in accord, and should be. I mean, for heaven's sakes, you've got treble. When an attorney sees treble damages, so in other words, you get the actual damages amount from the jury, and then that amount gets tripled automatically. Yeah. Plaintiffs' attorneys are very excited about that. So that is something that, you don't give that up very easily. And so that's something, I definitely think folks need to, be working hard on that because, and look, it's the same way. They're misusing these, the laws against that were intended for smallpox or for the Spanish flu or what have you.
That's right.
So now. Never let a good crisis go to waste. So they want to undermine our other protections, which are perfectly fine, which have good reason. There's a reason we enacted these in the cool of the afternoon. We should not be repealing them in the heat of COVID.
So it seems like you're saying that there have been times in the past that Americans have been forced to take medicine they didn't necessarily want or need. Has this happened in America before? Is there precedence for this?
It has. And this is the problem of all this. In law school, they teach you, hard cases make bad law. And so when you see government officials who take power that could be used legitimately in certain circumstances, and then they port it over to a circumstance like this one where it's not called for, at least not in the way that they are using it, you have a problem because you're sitting there going, well, look, if we have an actual Spanish flu epidemic killing millions of people, just dropping dead,
but we don't have that
in short periods of time. Right.
We don't have that. In fact, during the Spanish flu time, we actually shipped soldiers overseas to fight World War I in close contact. We didn't quarantine anybody. We didn't do any of that. We went and fought World War I.
Although it is funny, I have seen pictures of folks using cloth masks during Spanish flu time. But I got to tell you, look, we're those of us who are parents, you're sitting there going, if somebody had, if there was a disease that was spreading that was going to kill my little 3-year-old and 5-year-old, I'd darn well wear a mask for it. But
that's not the case.
Disease, right. And this disease where it's you're talking 0.1% in terms of death rate. We appear to have effective therapeutics coming down the line. The infection rates are nowhere near it. And again, the impact is on certain communities who we can now vaccinate, and they can do that by their choice. We're at a place where we've got this thing relatively well managed. It's certainly not a time to start doing these draconian mandates that have been put in place by certain government officials.
And I don't know that in the past we ever just negated natural immunity as well, which is a huge issue with a lot of folks. Because the way that the virus has been presenting itself apparently in the population is that when you already have natural immunity and then you double down with a vaccine, that at sometimes actually your system overreacts. I mean, there's been studies on that as well.
Sure, and there are some. I've seen some things on CDC that say, well, the vaccine can improve your immunity if you already have natural immunity. The problem is the improvement is, it's fractional. It's tiny fractions. But when you compare natural immunity straight up against vaccinated immunity, it appears to be just as strong and may appear to be stronger on these variants that are vaccine resistant. So, but where that's really coming into play is one of the real big problems we're facing is you'll see employers saying, well, yes, we aren't going to challenge your religious exemption, but we can't reasonably accommodate you because to put you around another human being would mean essentially to murder everyone. And I've got folks that have had and recovered from COVID, have antibodies, and this is the answer from the employer. No, you're so dangerous. We can't have you in any position other than working from home. And of course, they won't let them work from home because they want to fire them. And so we're stuck in this spot. Really, I mean, if you want to talk about what legislators should be doing,
yes, let's
legislating on this topic to allow, to enforce some sanity, medical, based on sound science and medicine. But we're not seeing that right now. Again, most folks, if you work for a private employer and you've got a problem on this front, you have to wait to be fired. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible system.
Okay,
problem we have right now.
A good question here then would be, I believe Florida enacted a no-vax mandate law. How effective are those for private employees in terms of enforcement for the employee?
Well, and Jeannie, I mean, this is a place. Look, we who are traditional Republicans, small government conservative,
right.
whatever you want, whatever label we want to apply to ourselves. The idea that we would now be sitting here going, yes, we want a state to mandate that a private employer can't impose a certain
right.
policy.
I know it's like yes, I know it seems nonsensical, but that's where we are.
Well, that's where we are. It's perfectly legal. That should be effective, and if that laws like that, I would say when you've got Republican states. So when you see something like a Texas that took a very strong stand on abortion, on firearms regulation, on some other issues that they feel very strongly about there. It's when the Republicans have control of the government, they need to show the people what does it look like when Republicans are in control and how do we want to really make it work. And in Florida, it looks like they're making a similar effort here to say, hey, no to this vaccine mandate. And Florida has one of the highest vaccine percentages
So
in
is
the
that
country.
working, though? Is that working?
Yeah.
Are employees protected from having this mandated jab or lose their job? Are they protected in Florida?
I am not familiar. I've only heard about that law, so I don't know if there are exceptions to that or what have you. But that is look, when I heard, Kristi Noem, governor of South Dakota, so, seen as a conservative Republican, she said, well, I can't do that to companies. So, well, I'm sorry, Governor, in this situation, you're going to need to.
Right.
So, that's
because with legislation, there's always a balancing act. Whose liberty are you protecting, and which one has more value at that point based on what's going on? And I would argue that in this case, the liberty of the individual, which we have always protected, which is why literally our Constitution was written was to protect the individual liberty against government tyranny. Well, this includes like big corporate tyranny, in my opinion. That personal liberty is super important. So I would say that's a higher value.
Well, and there's nothing magic about corporations and business. I mean, I always saw our kind of the best strain of conservative thought. I mean, we've always been for the little guy to some extent. So when you see imbalances of power, you try to balance them out to some extent. You see big monopolists. Well, you know what? Yeah, I mean, are we excited about government getting involved in business? No, but when it's a monopoly, we're cool with busting it up. I mean, that's fine. Again, and can that be abused? Certainly. But at least for me, I think we're at our best, maybe our most American, as it were, to appreciate, protecting the little guy in whatever setting we're in. Yeah.
One last comment here. I would say, though, that you just hit the right word. The right word is abuse. And these policies at this point feel abusive. They don't feel. There feels like
punitive.
They're punitive. Like they don't make sense in the medical framework from what we know and what a lot of people know. But they do seem abusive, and I think they've crossed that line. That's where I am.
I know there are a lot of people who are feeling resentment right now, and I think there is something productive in people who have a platform or a voice that where folks listen to them, is to some extent identify that resentment and possibly allow folks to process it. Say, hey, there's a reason you're feeling this. Maybe you went and got the vaccine even though you didn't want to because you wanted to keep your job. Perfectly fine. Remember that feeling though, when you felt helpless, and when you next have the opportunity to do something about it, do something about it.
That's right.
And so that is
at the voting booth. At the voting booth, do something about it.
I mean, in every part of life. Yeah. I mean, and you know what? Family conversations. I mean, I will say this: if you watch the evening news, you want to, you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, we occasionally flip through it just so that I can see like what is being presented to the American public, who are still watching this trash, and it is outrageous. And if I watched that every night, I'd be scared out of my mind, and the triple masking and triple vaxxing and everything else. But so you have to feel for folks who are in that spot, and maybe you can help if you've been red pilled, as they say, you can help folks maybe get out of that, diminish their exposure to this, the corporate media that is just feeding this anti-science falsehoods to folks.
Okay. I have a question about something Jeannie touched on earlier. It's a little bit of a shift from the corporation side, but it's something I just haven't. Yeah, I just can't work it out for myself. And so since you're a constitutional lawyer, I would hope you would be able to help me with it. It's so the Biden administration says if you're a non-citizen, you're not required to take the vaccine. But if you are a U.S. citizen, you're required to take it, which this seems to be clear violation of the Equal Protection Clause, right?
Right.
And so,
right. So you would say, yeah, the government's interests are identical with both groups,
right?
And so that makes the restriction irrational on that basis.
So how do you prosecute that? Because you can't. I mean, how does this come together?
Well, here's one of the dirty little secrets of what Biden has done is that they haven't necessarily enacted the rules to put into law what he said he was going to do or what his executive order said.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So in fact, yeah, because you're going to require every employer over 100 people to vaccinate. That's
so arbitrary. Yeah.
And you're going to use OSHA to do so?
Right.
Yeah.
No.
All the OSHA lawyers are sitting there scratching their heads going, how exactly does that look, Mr. President? So they haven't even drafted rules for this. So it's really, what Biden did was really, it was almost virtue signaling or signaling to folks that, well, now you private companies, you go impose this mandate.
Right.
Because, any government rule on this is probably going to be struck down, on a variety of grounds. And so they are using private companies as their proxies to some extent. And so when you see somebody like a United Airlines, and we've had calls from folks
600 people apparently.
Right. And, well, and here's the thing. So they, I believe they fired the folks that didn't have a medical or religious exemption, didn't file for either of those. But what I understood they were telling folks was, even if you have a religious exemption, we're still going to take you off the line and give you unpaid leave. Which, but here's the difficulty: the way the employment law goes, our remedy is to wait for the people to be fired, and then file charges and get damages down the road. Now, those damages could be substantial. Because it'd be your back pay, front pay, what have you, in terms of...
I hope they are. I hope they take these guys to the cleaners.
It's so ridiculous. Right. People who are vaccinated still carry the virus. They can still...
they can transmit it.
They're transmitting it. It's the
same thing we find in schools.
You only protect yourself if you have the vaccine. I just don't understand what these companies are. Are they that afraid? I guess they're that afraid of the federal government.
Yeah, and everyone is in a mask.
That's really saying
already.
Something.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you. So I was on the phone yesterday with one of our experts, who's an emergency room physician. So he's been running emergency rooms, managing COVID outbreaks in various parts of the country. And I asked him just point blank. I said, look, if everyone's masked up and they're following these precautions, do you spread COVID? And he's in a emergency room setting, so everybody's sick and vaccinated, unvaccinated, all together. Yeah. He said, look, no, they don't. When you use all the precautions correctly, they've got N95 masks and what have you. Look, you can do this. It's not. You can. I mean, we've all been shopping.
Yeah, N95 masks, not the cloth mask that my kid's wearing, or the surgical mask that is got gaps everywhere. Yeah,
sure.
And even with an N95, you have to change them out and all these other rules. So
but for the purposes of my clients who I want to keep at work, I don't want to be. I want them reasonably accommodated because everyone's in a stinking mask anyway. You're not spreading COVID at work. I mean, unless you're on top of each other and.
Social distancing though has more to do with it than masking. But anyway,
Sure. Yeah, but either way,
there's accommodations that can be made.
Yeah. And look, if everyone else is vaccinated, why are you worried about the the handful of people that are here that don't happen to be vaccinated, that frankly probably can't asymptomatically spread? I mean, this is another issue too. If the vaccine appears to be creating an ability for the vaccinated to do asymptomatic spreading, that was not really a thing in unvaccinated people. So when you get sick as an unvaccinated person, I mean, you can't spread outside of having symptoms for the most part.
Well,
That's our understanding.
it sounds like you had to go get an additional medical degree just to go ahead and prosecute
You know more
to
than you've ever
defend your
wanted to know about
clients
this.
in the legal forums.
Yeah.
It's
Anyway.
crazy. Yeah, dealing with doctors is it's
Oh
a lot
my
of fun.
Yeah.
gosh!
Yeah, those are our clients now.
Well, I'd like to see
Good,
some of their
though.
expert testimony come out in the public realm as soon as possible. Let us know what that says. Hey, Peter, we're going to let you go. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you for doing all that
yes.
you're doing. Not a lot of lawyers
We
want to
do.
take these cases.
Yes, but we will let our people know that they should visit thomasmoresociety.org. Is it ORG?
.org. Yeah.
.org,
Thank you.
and they should go ahead and look at your vaccine portal where you've got information for them, because really the only thing that they are able to do is either go for a religious or a medical exemption. Barring that, if they really want to fight this down the road, they have to be fired first, right? Those are kind of the steps.
That's been our problem. But
Okay.
again, we are, if you approach it right and you work, and if your employer's in good faith, they will reasonably accommodate you. That is
Okay.
how the law is supposed to work. Masks, social distancing, and we're already doing that in most states anyway. I mean, every indoor spot in Illinois, you're supposed to be masked. So, that's already what we're doing. So why not just, let you to continue to live your life and not be fired for your sincere religious beliefs.
Okay, so last question, because so much of this, people just didn't believe it was going to come to fruition where they'd actually lose their job. And now literally some people are days, weeks, or only months away from that occurring, where they have gotten a date certain that if you don't have the vax, we're going to let you go. What is your recommendation? How quickly can you turn around some sort of court order restricting the employer's ability to fire them? Is it now too far gone? Are they just going to have to make a decision one way or the other? Or what is your recommendation on short order cases? Because we are faced with this question all the time.
Yeah.
This is the real issue that, at least with private employers. Now, with public employers, you do have the First Amendment. So that can be another basis. But if they say, hey, we're going to respect your religious exemption, we just can't accommodate you, that becomes more of an employment issue. And the way the employment law reads, it's really, this is not ideal, but the employer is supposed to really try to accommodate you. And here, obviously, we would say they're not trying to accommodate; they're just throwing you off, throwing you off the cliff. The problem you've got is there's no court order that can be imposed, except after that you've got to go through you file with the EEOC. There's a state agency. Every state has a sister agency to the EEOC. You work through that. You file a charge. Eventually, you get a right to sue letter. Then you can go to court, or the employment agency will try to resolve it with the employer and the employee. So that is an interactive process down the road, but it's usually done after you've been terminated, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's the problem we're in. It's you're going to get to court, and by the time the court process goes, I mean, that is going to be a lengthy process. And yeah, I mean, I think there are, I mean, I'm not a plaintiff's employment lawyer normally, but those guys are going to have a lot of work to do over the next few years, defending, trying to get judgments. I mean, getting money damages for all these employees from their employers.
Well, what I am, and what I think you are as well, is somebody who believes in personal liberty and the free market. And I would really wish that the free market would fix this with, hey, come to our company. We'll take all the great talent we possibly can, and we are not going to mandate a vaccine that we think that you can make the best decisions for your own personal health on. And so I would prefer that all the great talent migrates to a company that believes in giving people the personal liberty to do this right thing, and that they would do that right now, and that everybody who wants to find that type of employment can do so. Same thing with free markets happen in states. If this is a big issue for you, then go find a job in Florida. Find a job where you are protected by a legal system that respects your personal liberties in the healthcare area. I mean, that is the laboratories of democracy that we've set up a long time ago. And I would wish that all these employers doing these mandates would be absolutely shunned and punished by both the consumers and the employee and the job market.
That might be the best practical advice,
Yeah.
which is, you know what? Yeah, tell that employer to take a hike.
Take a hike
if you can.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we actually had a case. A nurse got terminated. I mean, just drop of a hat, and we were filing the charge and going forward. The nurse had actually moved back with her parents and had already gotten a new job, so the damages were almost nothing. But because she was able to very quickly turn right around, get another job, you know, the market is actually pretty good right now for a lot of professions. So maybe, I mean, I guess, you know, this is not ideal, but if you are in that spot, yeah, that might. I mean, what you're saying, Jeannie, is good counsel.
Great. Well, hey, thanks a lot, Peter. We really appreciate your time. We know you're very, very busy doing these cases and still protecting David Daleiden. And so we appreciate all that you do to take care of the little guy.
We're doing what we can. So, yeah. And again, if folks need the help, I mean, we're trying to get to everybody that we can.
And I highly encourage our listeners to just send $50 to ThomasMoreSociety.org. Go ahead, get on there. These people do great work. They're a nonprofit. They're not making huge lawyer fees, but they are defending people who need it most. So thanks so much for what you guys do. You are really a blessing to the United States.
You guys, well, I thank you guys for. Love coming on to talk and keep up the great work.
Okay, we'll see you around the neighborhood.